Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP Jon Poz. With me today is a former WWE and NXT superstar. You may know him from Heavy Machinery. You may know him as Tucker Knight or Tucker. He is, of course, Mr. Levi Cooper. Levi, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing today, sir?
What's up? I'm doing good, man. Doing really well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So what's been going on in your world? What have you been up to?
Yeah, man. Mostly just been catching up on stuff at home. My wife is my wife is due late September, early October
Oh, wow.
with our second. My daughter just turned 3 in June, so I've just been doing that. My wife actually got a big promotion. She's an educator. She's has been a teacher. And now she's going to work for the district office. They've started this equity initiative at her school district in Evergreen, and so she's got that job, and we didn't know if she was going to get that or not. So she's been very supportive of me and my wrestling since we moved out to Florida together at the beginning of 2014, and instead of having both my kids go to daycare and try to find work or try to wrestle enough to kind of make up for that, I'm going to just stay at home through the rest of the year and keep getting my body and mind good, ready to go. And really as it pertains to wrestling, hit the ground running in 2022. So that's sort of what I've been up to since I've been released. Just kind of I've been doing a lot of yoga, and I'm actually going out at the end of the month to Atlanta to see the man DDP, spend a couple of days out there at the Performance Center. It's been doing a lot of the DDPY Performance Center, not the WWE Performance Center.
Right.
And so, yeah, man, just been, doing a lot of things to take care of my body and my mind, really. Obviously the end of my WWE run wasn't what I would have hoped for it to be. And the last 6 months there, so, they weren't the best. That took its toll on me a little bit mentally. So it definitely took me some time after I got released just to kind of, I had to decide whether I even wanted to wrestle again, right? Hey, I'm
Right.
feeling all these ways. Like, let me just give myself some space to kind of take inventory of, how I'm feeling and what I do want to do moving forward, and kind of make a decision. Yeah, I mean, wrestling just wasn't the only thing that I kind of had on my docket. Moving out of college, I do have an accounting degree, and I've always had aspirations to be a coach and kind of a mentor. So I've just kind of been making those decisions and sort of, like I said, kind of giving myself the freedom to just decide, okay, well, what is it that I actually want and what's best for me and my family and moving forward, and don't put your pressure on yourself that you have to kind of make those things happen immediately.
Yes, but congratulations on the baby. That's great. Great news.
Thank you.
With
Appreciate
you
that.
and getting in shape and stuff, you seem like you've trimmed down a bit. You seem like you're getting in great shape already.
Yeah, man, I've lost probably about 240 right now. At the biggest I was in Heavy Machinery, I was at 325.
Wow.
I was probably at 315 when we moved up from NXT to Raw and SmackDown. And, I mean, part of that kind of fit, we sort of had a fat guy gimmick, right? That was
Right.
kind of part of what, hey, it's Heavy Machinery. Like, and, I've always just been a big guy. I mean, I wrestled heavyweight in college. The weight class there was 285. And, I don't have the best metabolism. My family, genetically, we just don't, and a big part of sort of where I've gotten to at this point has also been kind of the discussion in my family growing up. And I'm sure this is the case for a lot of families around food is just about taste and making it delicious, and having it. And I'm not saying that's not important, but a big kind of mental pivot that I've made in the last year or so is just to really think about food as the fuel for your body, to do the things that you want to be able to do. I did a Whole30, which is a elimination style diet. And that helped me out a lot too, just to kind of recognize my relationship with food. And, I've been doing a lot of physical and mental work around, hey, like, you don't, it's hard to step back and kind of take inventory of yourself when you're on the road, every single week
Yeah.
for years in a row. It's just, you just don't, I mean, it's just hard to do that because you're just always going and going and going and always kind of like thinking about the next thing and the next thing. And, I just didn't realize how much, even though I was kind of taking care of myself, that there was areas of my, sort of physical and spiritual being that I was neglecting. And that was starting not to just take a toll on myself, but to take a bit of a toll on my family as well. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like, kind of obviously being in a financial position to be able to recognize that, hey, I need to take some time to work on myself and my family, and just kind of get the things, just get that, as a well-oiled machine as I can, moving from this kind of really crazy thing that I've been doing into sort of, just what is the next phase for all of us together, and yeah, I mean, I talked about yoga a little bit earlier. I think for the greater part of about 15 years, my mentality, my sort of goal was to get bigger, faster, and stronger as an athlete, kind of irregardless of what the long-term ramifications of that might have been, for my body. And, about a year ago, I realized that I was having some hip issues and I wasn't able to engage my glute minor properly, essentially, and not to get like into kind of the technical side of it, but
Right.
another part of kind of my family genetics I've discovered is just that we have kind of a frontward hip tilt. My parents both have it, and obviously it's exacerbated by sitting in a chair, a lot of time. But yeah, it's just something I started to realize, holy crap, man, my quads are super tight. Like I could squat 500 pounds, but I'm actually not doing it correctly. Like I don't have my core engagement the way that it should properly be in order to, be using all of your sort of what you call kinetic chains from the floor up properly. So that's been another big thing. I've kind of completely pivoted my goal from trying to get bigger, faster, and stronger to trying to basically improve my mobility, right? I got this book that's called The Art and Science of Mobility, and it has all of your kinetic energy positions, sort of like the chains that your body creates, muscular chains from the floor. And it has all these different exercises and movements that tests essentially that if you can do these, then your body has proper biomechanical mobility. And I realized, oh my God, like there's a couple of these, I'm so far off, I'm not even close. And like,
Right.
that means that the risk of injury is greater because your body's not, moving and not able to do the things that it's supposed to do. So some other piece of your body's having to sort of pick up the slack. And so that's been another big piece of catalyst sort of for my weight loss, over the last year or so.
How'd you get connected in with DDP?
So, I mean, so he came to the PC in Orlando a couple different times while I was
Oh, okay.
there. And just did a class for kind of everyone, and gave us the opportunity if we wanted to during those classes to give him, just some basic information, and he would help set us up an account, for free, essentially, right? I say, hey, like you guys are doing all this, like, so if you guys want to use, if you want to use my program, if you want to use the app, it's available for you guys to use free of charge. Just contact me. And so, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to pass up on that opportunity. And so, and that was probably 3 years ago now or something. And I just kind of was using it intermittently. Mainly at the beginning, I was just using it as a warm up, maybe do like 15 or 20 minutes of it and then go straight into the gym and lift, and then, sort of as I've continued my, journey and kind of talked about that pivot that I made, this became DDPY became a much larger piece of what I was doing, because I was starting to realize, especially around diaphragm breathing, that I was not able to do that properly. And I had some pretty big issues. And that meant I need to start back from the base. I needed so I stopped lifting weights for, probably 5 or 6 months and just focused on my core and trying to make sure that, I could breathe through my nose properly in these difficult positions, and, just do the kind of fundamental things that I realized that I had been neglecting for a while. And then, as I've been doing different interviews and kind of I just was talking about, sort of speaking my truth. Hey, like this has been a really positive force in my life. It's helped me out a lot. And so we just kind of got into contact through that, and he kind of gave me the opportunity if I wanted to come out and train with him for a couple of days. He just said, hey, this is an open invitation. If there's a date and time that will work for you. And yeah, so, I think it just kind of happened in kind of an organic way, right? As just sort of, like I said, me sort of promoting it, but not doing it for any reason other than, something that I really believe in and something that I've seen not just for myself, but, I have my mom on it now, and it's been helping her out a lot. I've been working hard to try to get my dad on it too, and the thing that I love the most about it is he has his sort of baseline that he's created, and then if you aren't able to start at that baseline, then he's moved the line backwards in a bunch of ways. And I feel like there's not a lot of workout programs out there that sort of like really try hard to meet people where they are. It's sort of like, well, you have to get to this particular place first before you can make, and that's valuable for some people, but the vast majority of people that maybe haven't been in the gym, since they were in high school or whatever the case may be, like, yeah, you can't make it so that after they do one workout, they can't get off the couch for the next 3 days. Like they're not going to keep doing that. It's not realistic. So, he has programs in bed. He has a whole series where you're in a chair, and then you graduate from that to where you stand, but you still have a chair, and you use it in all these. So you're doing all the same movements that you would be doing without any assistance, but he's found a way to bring assistance in and sort of, like I said, just kind of move that baseline backwards to meet people, essentially wherever they are. Like if you can barely get out of bed, he has 3 workouts where you're laying in your bed and doing them. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just been it's been great for me, and obviously, he's done a lot of amazing things for a lot of people.
With you and just kind of talking about the other performance center, the WWE Performance Center, how do you actually break in and get in there? Because you're an amateur wrestler. Is that like a Jerry Briscoe thing? Is that Canyon Seaman? Oh, it's Briscoe. Okay, so Briscoe recruits you in?
Briscoe recruited me in, yeah. So I'm wrestling at Arizona State. I wrestled there for my last 3 years in college, and yeah, my senior year, I think it was at Las Vegas Invitational, which is like early December, I want to say. Yeah, he was there and talking to a few different people, and we just kind of exchanged information. He said, "Hey, I know you're in your senior year, so when you're done wrestling this year, when you're kind of finishing up school, we get back in contact with me, and we'll try to set up a time for you to come out to Florida for a tryout." So I graduated in May, and I had my tryout like mid-June. I was actually part of the last tryout that took place at FCW in Tampa. They started the Performance Center, or it opened up in July of 2013, and I had my tryout in June of that year. So yeah, I have my tryout. Actually, Chad Gable was at that tryout. Sonny Dinza, who was Acom from AOP, he was at that tryout. It was mainly a tryout of amateur wrestlers and a little bit smaller tryout than maybe they would normally have, particularly at the Performance Center. I think there was like less than 20 of us. And then, yeah, ultimately end up getting called about a month later on my 23rd birthday, actually on July 24th. Get a call and they, hey, we'd like to hire you. And then it took about 6 months or so. I actually didn't start until the very beginning of January 2014. Because my first day, when I remember I drove into Orlando, me and my now wife, it was January 1st, 2014. I was like, oh, okay. So that was cool, right? Just like, well, we're starting off the new year. And at that time, neither of us had ever even been to Florida. So, it was a pretty big leap or whatever you want to say. Was we kind of just went out there to the two of us to try to make things happen. And it was awesome.
So when you first started out, like, were you a fan at all, or did you have any sort of like inkling, like, hey, I like pro wrestling as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't like a massive fan, it wasn't like a dream of mine from the time I was a child or anything. You know, I was born in 1990, so I was coming of age during the Attitude Era. So I mean, all of me and my friends and everyone was kind of watching wrestling in, 98, 99, 2000, 01, 02, right? It's like 03, wrestling super hot. Um, so yeah, we were watching. Stone Cold was definitely my favorite growing up. I was just like, okay, I mean, this guy's the man.
Yep.
Um, and then by the time I kind of got to high school, I sort of stopped doing or watching anything that wasn't going to try to get me to play sports at the Division I level. That was particularly football. I started playing football as a 10-year-old, tackle football. And I wanted to be a Division I football player. I wanted to play football at Oregon State. I grew up going to Oregon State football games, the energy, all of it. Like, I was like, I want to be on that field. I want to be one of those guys wearing the black and orange. That's what I want to do. And so, like I said, about the time I got into high school, the vast majority of things that I was doing in my life was in service of that. I used to ski and ride four-wheelers growing up. I gave that up, knowing that if I hurt myself doing this, I won't forgive myself. I'll
Right.
be
Smart.
super pissed.
Yep.
And ultimately I end up, wrestling in college because I didn't get any Division I offers to play football. And when I guess sat down and sort of decided what do I really want, I wanted to be a Division I athlete more than I wanted to be a college football player. And that was, ultimately what led me to decide to wrestle in college as opposed to, I had some offers from Division II and Division III schools to play football in Oregon. And yeah, ultimately I ended up going to Portland State as a freshman. They dropped their wrestling program my first year. Then I go to Cal State Bakersfield for a year. They dropped their wrestling program again, first year there. So my third year in school, I drive to Arizona State. I've talked to the coach one time, like the person I'm staying with. I've only met him twice. I was like, hey, I figured they didn't have a good enough heavyweight. Like, I knew who their heavyweight was the year before. I thought I was good enough to be the starter there. So I just packed all my stuff up in my car and drove there, And I think at the time, I was just like, well, if I'm going to make a bet, dude, I'm going to make this bet on myself, like, because I'm in control.
Yeah.
I'd rather make a bet on myself than on anyone else. And I think that helped me a lot when it ultimately came the time to, make the decision to continue an athletic endeavor and go into professional wrestling, and sort of be like, okay, hey, like, I've already uprooted my life and moved someplace before and bet on myself, and it's been successful. Like, I was a Division I All-American at Arizona State, started there for 3 years. I went to the national tournament all 3 years. Objectively, I was quite a successful wrestler at Arizona State. I was in the top 15 in the country all 3 of those seasons. And yeah, so that was, I think that was a big part of me feeling like, hey, I can go to Florida and I can do this thing.
Right. So when you first get there, you're pretty much, brand new to professional wrestling at this point. What is like I guess the standards or the practice, like when you first get there, like, what do you need to do? Do you meet with like Triple H and all the guys? Like, do they throw you in drills right away? Like, how does it go when you first get there?
Yeah, so it's different now. At the time when I started, DeMott was the head coach, so he was in charge of the Performance Center for probably my first 15 months or so. So at the time when you come in, you actually don't train in the ring for a month, and this is across the board, not just for someone who didn't have wrestling experience like me, but I remember when Kevin Owens first came in, there was like, well, you got to sit out for a month, I'm just like, this is kind of stupid, but whatever, So,
Yeah.
and that obviously ultimately that changed and went away and became a thing where you kind of came in and you started training in the ring right away, but at a very sort of just very watched and constructed kind of in its way. So yeah, for me, yeah, I lived for that first month, and I remember that kind of I didn't, obviously I've thought about a bunch about, hey, what are going to be the kind of barriers, right? I've done some of my research before I walk into this building, and I have some idea of what I'm getting myself into, but I didn't, I didn't consider how the jargon or sort of the lexicon of professional wrestling would be an immediate barrier, and so I just can remember like people talking about, the heat or the cutoff or kind of these different things early on, and just being like, yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, can you guys explain that to me, please? So, that was kind of, I guess, like a funny little thing looking back on it. That was a bit of a barrier. I remember promo class early on being super daunting, very nerve wracking. Like, and I'd consider myself a pretty good public speaker. Had communication classes in college. Like I did some speech and debate when I was in high school, speaking in front of, people who I don't care about or just who I don't have any relationship with. And I don't actually, doesn't matter to me what their kind of instantaneous feedback is, no problem. But I started cutting promos at the PC right away, and it's all my peers, Dusty Rhodes, William Regal, and that's a very nerve-wracking environment. So I remember too, for my first 3 months, like my promos were not good. Like they were actually bad. I was trying to do a bunch of extra work, and it was mainly just around my level of comfortability. Like I just wasn't comfortable. It was clearly obvious that I wasn't comfortable. I'm having a bunch of nerves as I'm walking up there, and so that was something that also kind of, took me a while to kind of get over, and was like almost a mental thing more than anything else, of just like, okay, just forget about who's in the room or whatever, and just, say what you would say if there was no one here, or whatever the case may be. And then I think also it's not that people were treated me badly when I got there necessarily, but a lot of people have already kind of paid their proverbial dues, right? They've wrestled on the indies for multiple years, right? They've kind of cut the cloth, whatever cliche you want to kind of describe that by. So, it's sort of expected of you to, walk in, be willing to humble yourself, right? Be willing to understand that, like, for me, I also think like, and I get this to the maximum. Maybe I didn't when I first started, but that like there's a big respect piece of just understanding and appreciating the people that came before you and the foundation that they laid before you, and that like this thing is where it is now because of the hard work of all of these individuals, as a group, moving through the territories, right, and just all the different ways that sort of wrestling has manifested itself in America, and the ways that people have gotten it over, and just that, it wouldn't be what it is here for you to be having this opportunity if it wasn't for, the work of all these other people that came before you, and to at least, recognize, appreciate, and respect those things, because, it's not just about you and what you can kind of provide, but it's about this kind of this thing as an entity, right? And how we all care about this thing as an entity here. Like the people here really care about professional wrestling and wanting it to be good and be successful across the board. And that, there's some expectation as you're walking in that building that if you're not feeling that way, or you just don't come from that background, that like you need to understand that, and you need to, and then on top of that, like I didn't wrestle a match for a whole year in NXT, right? I'm just going to all the shows. I'm setting up and tearing down rings. I'm working security at the shows, and then obviously I'm training during the week, and I mean, in that first year, I probably wasn't ready to be having any matches. I might have had a few inside the Performance Center in front of my peers or something, but no live event matches for me. I think for like about I think I had my first one in February of 2015. So it took me about 14 months from being in that building until I had my first match. So, I've seen a lot of people not make it through a whole year there. I'll just say that. Like from the time I started so January 2014, the day I started in that building, to the day that I moved up to the main roster, there was only 3 talent that were still in the building that had been there when I started. Otherwise, every other face was new. So you're talking about nearly 100% turnover in a 5-year period. So, a lot of people come and go, and, like I said, if you're not willing to kind of do those things and just be like, okay, hey, look, like I don't know anything about this. And so before I'm sort of allowed to have the chance to figure out what my piece of pro wrestling might be, like I gotta have to learn how to wrestle and be safe, right? I have to do all these other, things. And it was partially because of the time too, right? The network wasn't even a thing when I started. The network became a thing in March of 2014. So NXT on television is not really a thing. They have their TV show, but it's not on the network. It's just completely different. When I started there, it was still purely a developmental brand.
Right.
There was no, hey, we're trying to draw money with this thing, and then probably a year and a half or so, 2 years after I started, that was when a giant shift happened. And it's okay, now like we're live on the network. We're a big piece of the network platform in general, maybe the biggest piece of the network platform as it pertains to going forward. Like live things from NXT is a huge driver of the network early on. And so, that meant that once that kind of got established, then there was 2 touring brands. Then people started going, the NXT started running road shows, and then there become a lot more opportunities for live events in Florida for talent. Like I said, in that first maybe 15 months that I'm there, they hadn't done any road shows at all. The first time they did was they did the Arnold Classic, and that was right around the time that Bill DeMott got let go. So, like I said, up to that point, there was only shows in Florida. And so that's mainly for people working on TV. So it was much more difficult to get on those shows and kind of get your first repetitions in than it became after a couple years. And, okay, now we have all of our TV people are in Ohio for this weekend, but we still have 3 shows in Florida. We got to fill that card up. Obviously, that means, there's 8 more matches, and that means there's a lot more opportunity for people, and that's why the numbers grow. I think when I started at the PC, there was like 65 people. Now I believe, well, maybe not now after the last couple months, but
Right.
There was over 100 talent in that building at different times when I was there. So, it also expanded quite a bit in just the number of people in the building.
You think it was too much to have that many people in the building?
Well, at times, yes. Like it's large enough, and there's enough coaches that they kind of figure out how to stagger the, so like sometimes you'd have your in-ring time from 8 in the morning to 11, and then you might lift in the afternoon. Other times you might have an 8 a.m. lift. It goes by month, right? So every month they would change the schedule. And I think maybe when I started, there was 5 coaches and 5 classes, and eventually there became 8. So that was another kind of way that they, sort of grew it. Yeah, in terms of room for all of those people to get opportunities potentially on television and live events, yeah, too many, definitely. This is purely speculation on my part, and some people might be pissed about this speculation, but I'm saying it anyways. I think that, especially around the time that AEW announced they were going to become a thing, right? WWE started hiring basically as much talent as they could to try to starve the market. That's my opinion of it. I don't think, I think that's how it went down, and so for the better part of 2 years, right, they were hiring a lot of people, and not all of those people ever got any opportunities, some of them, or not any really good ones anyways. And that's partially what it is, right? You sign that contract, what you're getting yourself into by the same, token. But, yeah, I do think, there was a bit of that from them. And then obviously based around kind of the way that they've been letting people go since I got let go, it seems clearly obvious that they had too much talent, right? And that, like I said, that's my guess as to the reason that they were sort of trying to choke the market a little bit. And then, oh, we're in the pandemic, and maybe there's not a place for all these people to hurt us immediately. And then we can kind of let some of them go, and we don't have to worry about them making an immediate impact in the same way that maybe they would when wrestling's in, full on and the world's not in this crazy time period. Again, that's just my speculation, but
yeah, that's been out there. People, like a lot of other people said too, like, man, they were signing so many people because AEW came around. It's like, nope, we're going to scoop everybody up. And now it's almost like AEW scooping everybody up and WWE's releasing everybody. It's like it's crazy what's going on in wrestling.
It's interesting, man. It's definitely interesting.
Have you had any interest? I know you're waiting for 2022. Any interest in AEW, or do you follow like that side of wrestling at all? Away from
Yeah, I mean,
WWE?
I'll watch and see what they're up to. And I think I've always been of the opinion that that more is good for everyone, and that particularly for the fans, right? It's like, hey, these the guys who started AEW with Tony Khan, right? The Bucks and Cody and those Hangman, they built themselves a very organic grassroots following, right? And who's going to go with them wherever, because they were able to really get to people's emotion, right? And I mean, you want people to remember you, they remember the way you feel, right? And these guys, they understand the internet age and that kind of much better than WWE, in my opinion. Maybe not NXT. I mean, it's kind of apples and oranges a little bit, but obviously, there was a head-to-head thing there, and whether that, I mean, kind of both sides played into that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, they to me are an alternate product, right? They're not trying to do the same thing that WWE is trying to do. They're trying to do something different, and that's going to appeal to a different audience. I mean, WWE has their audience at this point. They're a family-driven show. It's not like that's what they are. They're not the Attitude Era anymore. They have corporate sponsorships to protect. Their money comes from television deals in the network, and they have vast number of revenue streams based around all kinds of things that are not wrestling immediately on television. And AEW, I would say they're a little bit more of a wrestling show than WWE is. That's WWE has always talked about trying to be a variety show, at least to us internally. We're having these discussions all the time about like, hey, we're the traveling circus. Like we need to have all these different things to kind of have a broad appeal to, different groups or whatever these people are looking for. Right. And whereas to me, AEW is kind of, at least in its early stage form, a show for the wrestling purist. To me, that's kind of the way that I viewed it as, and I think they're doing a great job of that. I think that and obviously they are. I mean, based on numbers and measurables, but also I think outside of the measurables, yeah, it'll be and anytime somebody that's a billionaire that owns sports franchises gets into something like that, you got to take them serious, right?
Yeah.
Cannot take them serious. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really have any immediate interest in wrestling on television again in the short term, because I feel like I have some work to do for myself in terms of just figuring out exactly who I am inside of the ring, outside of, heavy machinery, and just it's not that I feel like I'm lost in there or something, but that I don't feel like I have super polished who I am in all these situations, and, what are the components of my personality, Levi's personality, that really connect with, people to some degree, that I feel like I want to do some more exploring of that for myself. And I don't feel like having sort of the pressure of like, hey, if you're going to be on television, you need to have somewhat of a polished product that's ready for that. And that means maybe you can't experiment as much as, right? I mean, I want to just have the freedom to go follow my face and be like, okay, well, that didn't work, so I need to try something else out the next time, and not be like worried about there being a million eyes or that costing me something in the long run. Like I really feel like I need and want the creative freedom to make mistakes, and I just don't feel like that's super possible when you're trying to produce television on a weekly basis, because it's got to be good, it's got to be a television product, it's got to be polished.
So going back to NXT and the Performance Center, when you're down there and you're saying it takes a year basically to get in the ring and start wrestling, when do you get your name? When do you get Tucker Knight, and who comes up with the name?
Yeah, so I got my name. So I mean, I guess I came up with the name, right? Or I come up with the, like, at the time, I don't know if it's still this way, but you essentially, like, you provide them with a list of names, And then that list is run through legal, right, to see what names they actually can own, essentially, and so I remember putting a list of like 15 together and getting back maybe 4 names, and 3 of the surnames were Knight out of those 4. Ultimately, I ended up choosing it because I like the initials the best. I was thinking I might be able to use like TKO, right, or something along those lines. So that was sort of the initial reason that I chose that. I had the understanding that I could potentially change that name as well, moving forward if it didn't work out. And there was actually a time when Otis and I, when we were in NXT and we were first pitching, well, we weren't even Heavy Machinery. We were just Otis and Tucker when we made our debut in the Dusty Classic.
Yep.
And everybody loved the name Heavy Machinery except Triple H, from what I understand. He was not a fan of that name and wanted, he thought it was too gimmicky, I guess. I guess thinking like Fat Man in construction hats or whatever, and we're like trying to explain, hey, like we are Heavy Machinery. It's not a gimmick like like, and so I wanted to be called Tank and he wanted to be called Dozer. Right? And we were Tank and Dozer Heavy Machinery. That was our initial pitch. But we were told that we can't get those names, basically. Like we're not going to be able to register those names, so we can't do it, essentially, right? Because I mean, to me, that would have been awesome. I think Tank and Dozer Heavy Machinery, like you get it right now. It's like, okay, like this dude's a tank, that dude's a dozer. They smash everyone. This is what they do. They run through people. Like to me, it makes sense. It's not hard to figure out, So we couldn't get those, but we ultimately, I remember having a discussion with Joe Belcastro was his name. And at the time he's the head writer of NXT. So he's like the in-house guy because Triple H is still performing on television at this time. So, he's traveling every week. So you only see him maybe once a month when he comes to do TV for us. Otherwise, you don't have a lot of interaction with him. And so we were sitting in his office, and we have a list of kind of alternates to Heavy Machinery, and we're sort of having this, back and forth. And, I told him, I said, hey, look, I've been here for probably over 3 years at this point, and people have told me over those 3 years that like when you feel like something's right, you'll know it. And so I said, you could call us any of these names on the list that you want, but like if you're asking us, we're Heavy Machinery. Like that's what we feel. That's, I don't know. I don't want to give you some other answer and be like, hey, I'm okay with these other things, when the truth of the matter is we feel like this is who we are and this is who we want to be. And so we ultimately get the name. They end up giving it to us, obviously. And then, we underwent a name change when we move up, right? We lose our last names.
Right.
And from what I understand, the reason behind that was purely and simply, which is funny, but it doesn't make any sense. But in WWE logic, it makes perfect sense that whenever Vince heard us being announced when we had a TV match and the announcer had to go Tucker Knight, Otis Dozovic, Heavy Machinery, that was too long. So shit can the last names. It's just Otis and Tucker Heavy Machinery. And from what I understand, that was, and we weren't consulted about that at all. I found out about that name change via social media.
Wow, really?
Yes. Yep. I got a text from the social media guy saying, hey, like, we're going to change your handles because, you guys' names have changed. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Our names have changed. Like, oh, you guys haven't heard? Well, no, that's why I'm reacting this way. Like, yeah, Vince wanted to get rid of your guys' last names. So, and we weren't the first ones and we weren't the last ones to have that happen. It's happened several times, before and after. And so that's the reason, from what I understand, the reason why people lose part of their names is because it saves seconds on television. So
Crazy. And I guess to Vince, it just doesn't sound right, I guess, to him for whatever reason. It just sounds too long. So
too much of a mouthful, I suppose. Yeah.
Because he does that. You're right. Does it all the time. You always see like, okay, Big E Langston. Okay, lost to Langston. He's just Big E. Like it always
Yeah,
happens with the guy.
Cesaro.
Yeah. Yep. Vince is. I don't know. How is he though? He seems like he's a bit of a character. Even for as you hear horror stories, you hear good stories. Who knows what really is true or not from a fan perspective? But you do hear like these stories where it's like he has quirks. He's a very quirky guy.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, he's an enigmatic billionaire. I mean, he obviously I only know him for the 2 years that I know him. So I can imagine that having very little competition over a 15-year period, coupled with having the financial means to sort of get whatever you want, travel in whatever way that you want to travel, kind of make anything that you would like to have happen at your beck and call happen. That sort of leads you to be out of touch maybe with the everyday man, and to some extent. And the interactions that I personally had with Vince were all fine. I didn't have any bad interactions with him, I would say. It was always, obviously he's a very busy guy. He's the boss. So, for me, I'm always like, if I'm going to meet with him, you got to be coming correct. You got to have a reason to meet with him. As I'm not just like walking in there although there are other people who would tell you like, hey, you need to have that kind of relationship with him. Like you need to be able to walk in there and just, shoot the breeze with him for 10 minutes for no reason other than just to show face with the boss. And I'm sure people have success with that. That's just not my personal style, and so it wasn't a way that I went about my business, and that potentially hurt me, but I remember having a really good meeting with them one time when we pitched that we wanted to be the barbecue guys, and this was right around the time when we were moving to Fox on SmackDown. And so I remember pitching it to him like, hey, we want to tailgate the Fox red carpet. Like put us on the red carpet with our aprons, give us a barbecue, and we'll just tailgate the red carpet. It'll be good TV, or it'll be a good backstage seg. And he was really into it actually. He seemed to really like the idea. I think ultimately there was just a lot of things happening around that, so it didn't come to fruition there. And that was probably I didn't have a deep enough understanding of like, hey, Vince liked this idea, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I still need to like continue to push the lever, these whatever other levers to kind of keep the ball rolling, And so obviously we weren't able to do that for whatever reason. And like I said, I think obviously I'll take some of the blame for that too, of just not working well enough inside of the machine, and sort of, like I said, just understanding how to keep that going. The last conversation that I had with him was actually after I wrestled Ricochet in that real quick match a week after the split happens. And I thought about talking to him beforehand, but I just decided, you know what, like I'm just gonna do what's asked of me here after this, and then I'm gonna go talk to him in Gorilla after it goes down. So, we do the whatever a minute segment or whatever it is, and I just walked up to him in Gorilla and I said, hey, look, like I just want you to know whatever you ask me to do, like I'll always give you 100% and I'll always do my best, but I'm capable of doing way more than I just did out there. And I really hope I get the chance to prove it to you. And shook his hand. And, obviously I didn't. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he just kind of said, okay. And sort of, he's in Gorilla, he's in the middle of the show. So, he just kind of, yeah, okay, sort of deal or whatever. And, yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't have any necessarily bad interactions with him. Yeah, but he definitely has a presence. He has a bit of an intimidating presence. I would admit, carries himself in a certain way. And just, yeah, I mean, I think when I can't imagine doing that job and being that, having those responsibilities, and obviously he put his whole house and life on the line for the original WrestleMania, and has gotten to the place where he is now. And so, yeah, I mean, that's that, you know, anybody, I shouldn't say anybody, but a lot of people the people that I've met that have sort of been able to kind of make the life around them whatever they want it to be. And they all kind of have their own personality, right? Or sort of just like they're so used to the acquiescence from everyone to sort of whatever they want, you know, because
Yep.
they can make that happen no matter what the circumstances are around them. Mostly, you know, that just comes with a certain like, I hesitate to say like narcissistic attitude, because I'm not saying that that's what he is, but I do feel like just kind of when you're the man, like there's a necessary ego piece to having to do that job, right? Is sort of the point I'm getting at, and like that exists there, and I feel like I'm not blaming him for that, but just like that's probably a necessary piece of doing that job. That, you know, you just like when you say things, they happen, right? And so that's him.
Yeah.
Like basically, hey, when I say something, it happens. If it's good or if it's bad, like it's gonna happen. And so that's sort of the way you got to figure out to navigate those waters, at least around him, you know, and kind of, I mean, if you have a great relationship with him, then that's awesome, because you can go straight to him and he can make it happen, right? But by the flip side, if you don't, or you know, whatever the case is, like he, yeah, I mean, he's just more hands-on with some people than he is with others, you know.
With him and the whole Heavy Machinery breakup, did they even explain to you guys why they broke up Heavy Machinery? Because it seemed like a hot act, seemed like you guys were getting over. You know, did they even say anything to you and Otis? Like, hey, we're going to break you guys up.
No, no. You know, I could feel it coming. Obviously, you know, I paid attention during my run and seeing what's happened to other tag teams that move up, and sort of the way that sometimes manifests itself. Um, you know, I truly believe that, at least in its WWE's current form, whoever executives don't feel like tag team wrestling really draws money, you know, that's purely just based on the spike. You know, they just, it's rarely at the top of the card. You know, it's rarely getting more than maybe 15 minutes on a pay-per-view. And, you know, the minute that they think one member of a tag team could be a hot singles act, then they're breaking them up, and they don't really care about the other person necessarily if they think that they can make money with, you know, one act. And that's the way that I kind of see at least the sort of meta reason. Um, you know, I think, not to make excuses, but I feel like the pandemic really hurt our act bad. I mean, it's hard to pro wrestle in any form without fans. They're like the
Right.
central piece of the exercise, right? Like without an audience, pro wrestling wouldn't even exist in its infancy stages. Like the only reason that it is a thing on this planet is because people paid money to come and watch it. Otherwise, it wouldn't, you know, obviously we're living in a different time period. There's television, so we can produce television wrestling wise, but still you're missing this fundamental, right? The like feedback immediacy between audience and performer, to me, is what makes pro wrestling as an art form special. Like you don't have that feedback immediacy in a lot of other, like in a sport, you can't imagine going to a live event typically, unless you're like paying a cajillion dollars for floor seats, and then maybe LeBron will sweat on you. But
Yeah.
you know, you're going to an NXT live event, like you could be sitting in the fifth row. You know, if you yell something, the performer might look right at you and say something back to you. You're not going to get that at a Broadway show. You're not getting that anywhere else. So to me, like that's what makes pro wrestling what it is. Great, anyways. And so, and I think our act was really tailored around that. Heavy Machinery, we were very much a fan-centered act. You know, we're very much interacting with the fans type. That's just a big part of our gimmick. It's a big part of what we do inside of the ring. And so you sort of take that away from us. And, you know, it just kind of, I think it hurt our act more than maybe it hurt some other acts not to have fans initially. And then, you know, I mean, the WrestleMania thing with Otis and Mandy that was supposed to be a mixed tag match from what I understand, or at least a 6-on-6 with Dolph and Rude and you know, myself and Otis, or potentially a tag match, potentially a 6-person intergender. Like
Right.
things were all kind of being thrown around before the pandemic happened, and then the pandemic happened, and of no fault of his own, Bobby Roode lives in Canada, so he's stuck in Canada for some months at that time. And so that means I'm not a part of WrestleMania because you can't have more baby faces than heels. That doesn't make any sense, right? So now that match becomes just Otis and Dolph, and I'm not part of it at all. So I think, it just kind of happened. And then not too far after the pandemic happened, they started leaving me at home, and there was other people too, like Gable was being left. There was a lot of people being left at home. And so I don't know if it was people with families or what. I mean, obviously the world's in a crazy time. Like, we're not even testing at this point in the company. And so they're very tight-lipped about everything. So I don't know exactly I don't know if I'm being left home because I have a family, or I'm being left home because they just want to use Otis and not me. Like, they won't give me these answers. They're not telling me this stuff. So he wins the Money in the Bank contract, right, about a month and a half after WrestleMania or something. I obviously know when that happens, yikes, like, this might be bad for us as a team moving forward. Who knows? Like I said, because we're still not getting any information. And at the time, I think maybe for 5 or 6 weeks, I wasn't even being brought to television. So I feel like there's a chance that they were going to try to just break us up right then and there. And maybe they weren't happy with what they saw around. Oh, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that they would give him the briefcase and then have us still be together.
Right.
That was like the initial plan. Because I don't feel like they were ever going to use the briefcase on the tag team titles for the same reason that I was talking about earlier. That's basically a ticket to them fucking winning the belt, right? Ticket to winning the heavyweight championship. And that's the premier, that is echelons higher than any other title in the company, right? The Universal title and the World Heavyweight title, they're like way up here. And then the mid-card belts are like down here, and then whatever, at least in terms of the way that the company treats them, in my opinion.
Right. Yep.
So, I never felt like they were going to, I mean, obviously we joked about it, talked about it. What if they use it for us to win the tag titles, dude? That'd be so awesome, but it's like, I don't think that's realistically gonna happen. Hopefully it does. If it does, amazing. Like, we'll make the most of that, and that would be so cool. But and so, like I said, whatever they're doing with him around that time, and he's wrestling some singles matches, and ultimately I think he tagged with Braun Strowman at some point in time during that, because Braun had won the title, and so they were doing the kind of like, drawn out. Oh, we'll put the briefcase guy with the championship guy, and they'll have a match, and then we could tease whatever. So, yeah, man, that's all going down, and obviously, ultimately, they bring me back and we do the whole storyline with Miz and Morrison. And so, then they do another thing they normally do, and they split us up via the draft for no reason, essentially. But they do that before we've culminated this other storyline, right? So, like, I'm moved to Raw, but we still haven't finished up the trial yet. So now both of us are working, even though they are like adamant when the draft happens, oh, you're only going to be working one brand. Inevitably, of course, people have to work both brands, right? So from what I understand, I think the initial plan for me was for me to wrestle on Raw Underground, right? So because Raw Underground was still a thing when the draft happened, but then it took us like a month to finish out the storyline and before I actually turned, and then Raw Underground had been canned by that time. So as best as I could kind of figure out, that was the plan for me. At least it wasn't like, oh, we're just going to break him up and have nothing for this guy. Like, we'll use him and his amateur background in Raw Underground, and who knows, maybe a couple of Raw Underground segments, and I'm able to get over a little bit as an amateur wrestler, and now I have some kind of thing to work on, and I'm able to use that moving forward on television. But that didn't go down. And so obviously the split happens, and the circumstances around that, really my only regret is not saying no to that. I wish I would have said no. I didn't get the answers that I should have gotten, and I'll take some of the blame for that. It's not that I didn't ask questions. I was paid a bit of lip service, but ultimately, I think that it happened the way that it happened so that I would kind of just do it and not ask questions because, so I'm on Raw now. So before that happens, I get a call on Wednesday afternoon. Hey, we need you to leave Thursday morning to come to SmackDown. Right. And this is not that rare of an occurrence that you're like called and asked to leave in under 24 hours. And look, man, I mean, it's my job. I'm under contract. I get it. But in the middle of the pandemic, like this is probably the 5th or 6th time that I've been called in under 24 hours to fly across the country, and
Right.
it's like, and, I mean, I'm like, whatever. So, So I get out there and we have this in-home app called the TR app. It's got a calendar on it. And if you're booked on a specific date, you have a dot on that calendar, right? So the reason I say this is because when I get to Orlando on Thursday night, I have a dot for Friday, meaning I'm booked for SmackDown, and I have a dot for Monday, meaning I'm booked for Raw, but I do not have a dot on Sunday for Hell in a Cell. So
Weird.
So we do the SmackDown thing and we do the El Gran Gordo thing, right? Otis in a mask, which I thought was actually a pretty decent segment. So still, then Saturday comes along. I still don't, Otis is obviously booked. The match is booked for between him and Miz, but I'm still not booked. Sunday comes around. It's like 1:00 in the afternoon. I'm in my car driving to the golf course in Florida. Like I'm not booked, dude. I'm gonna go get around golfing, dude. I'm gonna go hit a little right ball around, drink some beers. And I get a text message from one of the girls in travel, like not even creative or nothing, right? They're saying, hey, they need you at the arena. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to make call time. Call time's 2:00. I'm like, I'm going to be late. They're like, whatever, just get there when you can, Okay, fine. So I end up getting to the building around 3:00 probably, because, like I go back to my hotel and get my stuff or whatever. And nobody talks to me for like 2 hours. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I can't get any answers. Finally, like 5:00 rolls around. This is what we're going to do. I get the promo that I'm going to do afterwards. They give me that. They're saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it. By the time we kind of all finished talking about it, it's probably like 5:30, 5:45. The show starts at 7. I think we were the second or third segment. So it was like, hey, we got to be ready to go by 7:30, 7:45. So I just asked quickly, hey, like, what are we going to do something after this? Is this leading to a story? Oh yeah. You guys are going to, whatever. Kind of like I said, that's my mistake. I should have been like, no, I need you to tell me exactly what the plan is after this. Right. But in my mind, I'm like, it makes no sense that we're going to do it would make no sense that we would do a split and there would just be nothing happen at all. If you want to fire me, just have him kick my ass up and down the ring the next Monday, whatever, like do something. I mean, certainly the split didn't help me, but didn't help him at all either. And like, if what you guys ultimately want is for him to be your single star, like how much of a dumbass does it make him look that his best friend turned on him after 3 years and he just goes about his merry way like nothing ever happened?
Yeah.
That's just like,
got to culminate it. Yep.
Right. And this is after you guys have already botched the Mandy thing and made those two go along their merry way like it never happened either. Like a guy like Otis would just forget about Mandy and that would make any semblance of sense. No. Right. So, I mean, that's why I didn't push harder to get the answers during that time period, because I'm thinking in my head, like, there's no way we're not going to do anything on the backside of this. That would just be stupid. Like so I do it. And, I mean, I've watched it only one time. Was it the greatest turn of all time? No. Objectively, do I think it was good enough that you'll never be able to convince me that you couldn't have gave us 10 minutes on Raw and that would have been better than some of the other 10-minute segments on Raw the next Monday. Like, you'll never be able to convince me of that. It's just like, no, you like I said, even if you wanted to fire me, then just have him kick my ass for 10 minutes, and then at least I have something to go off of, like, oh, I can poor me myself or whatever, something. But
yeah, it makes no sense.
But so, that's kind of the way that whole thing happened. And yeah, man, it just, it sucked. It sucks. I will say too, I guess one piece of it, at least for me also, that was difficult and conflicting is, like, I really love Otis. Nico and I have very much a brotherhood. still speak every week, you know, like, and since the time that Heavy Machinery started, we've had a really good bond and a really genuine, more than friendship, brotherhood, you know. And this has been my brother's dream to be a WWE superstar way more than it's been mine. Right? I already talked about earlier how it was just kind of like I was prepared to be an accountant when I left college, and this
Right.
was just sort of there on the table, and I would have been a fool not to take it. And I feel like I made a lot of it. I mean, shit, I was with the company for almost 8 years. You know, that's a lot more than most people have when they walk in that door and have zero wrestling experience, you know. And so around kind of when he won Money in the Bank, right, and during this whole time period, like, of course I want Heavy Machinery to still be together and I want to be wrestling with my brother, but I also don't want to like push so hard that I get somebody in the company pissed off at both of us, and that ultimately jeopardizes what could be an amazing opportunity for my brother, someone who I genuinely love, right? Like, what kind of a piece of shit would I be if I took that opportunity away from him selfishly, you know? Like,
Right.
and you know, so I think some people may hear me say that and say like, well, there's no way you're thinking about those kinds of things, you know. But truthfully, like, that was a big piece of conflict that I was, you know, having internally, was like, hey, I'd like to try to push really hard for Heavy Machinery to stay together, but like, I don't know what the cost associated with that might be. So some of me is just going to shut my mouth and accept what's happening and just go along with it, you know, or not rock the boat enough that it could potentially, you know, cost him something. You know, so that was also kind of, like I said, for me, just a factor anyways in kind of that whole time period, and sort of, you know, just what was going on for me mentally, and trying to kind of navigate that situation.
So with Otis, obviously they never culminated anything. You guys don't really do anything. You kind of do the 24/7 thing for a little bit with the 24/7 championship. Like, are you sensing the release is coming? Because it's like, wow, like they screwed me. They screwed Otis a bit too, but they really screwed me, and he's going his way and I'm going my way. Like, what were your thoughts? Like thinking the release is going to happen soon?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that it was going to happen soon necessarily, right? I mean, I know, like, yes, as soon as, okay, we do the split, then the very next night on Monday, I not even wrestle on Raw. I wrestle on Main Event against Humberto Carrillo, you know, and they're like, well, we want you to be a heel, and I'm like, well, you guys just told me about the split last night at the last minute. All I have is Heavy Machinery gear, you know. And they're like, oh, it's fine, no problem, you know. And I'm thinking in my head, like, well, y'all are not setting me up for success right now. And like, I know what a turn looks like when you guys do want to set someone up for success, and that ain't happening in this. So like, yeah, I'm in trouble a little bit here. Like, I'm going to have to try to dig myself out. Who knows? Right. But yes, you know, like, I didn't give up, but I certainly knew, hey, being let go is certainly a possibility from here on going forward, like at any moment, because you don't have anything right now. You have no entrenchment. You have no traction at all. So, you know, yeah, it would be, you know, yeah. So yes, I figure that was something that, you know, could and potentially would happen to me after the split. You know, I pitched a couple things. I pitched like a dickhead country club golf character. You know, like I said, I like golf, so I felt like, hey, like, I could at least use the jargon of golf, and, you know, talk about making birdies and going out of bounds and whatever. You know, maybe I have a white glove and I like wear my white glove and I whatever. So, you know, something like that. I pitched having a somebody who's like my taskmaster, and I'm a mansplainer. And so like, all I'm doing all the time is just in my mind, like, I know how to fix the world's problems. So I'm just walking around trying to find people's problems to fix. And then my taskmaster is the person who's like, hey dude, like, it's time for you to wrestle. You need to, you know, and he's like
Yeah.
always keeping me on. I'm just walking around like, dude, you shouldn't be, you know, typing it on your phone like that, or that phone case is not good. Like, let me explain to you why the life case is actually the case for you. You know what I mean? Like, I know why you might think this is that. So, you know, it wasn't, like I said, I didn't give up, but, yeah, I mean, I was certainly worried about it. I mean, I had those conversations with my wife, and, hey, look, like, you know, this has happened the way that it's happened. Like, we need to be prepared for this thing to end at any moment.
With that and the release, is that like a Johnny Ace thing, a Mark Carrano thing? Like, how does that go down?
So, I mean, I think Carano got fired before I got released,
Okay.
or it was maybe right around. I got called by Johnny Ace. Yeah, personally. So, which I'm happy that I didn't have to talk to Carano anymore. Thank God. Uh,
Not a fan, I guess.
no, not a fan. No, that guy's a lying dirtbag.
Heard that from quite a few people.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's his job. That was his job. He was good at it. He was a Vince Shield.
Was it budget cuts? What's the reason? Like, that seems to be the thing that there's
For
budget
him?
cuts. No, well, for you, for your release.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I don't. Yeah, they weren't. You know, it wasn't. I wasn't really given any specific.
Okay.
Well, I guess maybe budget cuts. I don't know. I didn't really even listen when that 205. It's funny actually because so much of this happened around golf. I was standing on the first tee. I was literally getting ready to tee off to play 18 holes when I got the call, and it was like when I looked at it, it's a 203 number. I'm like, I know what this is, right? So I answered it, and I'm like I said, I'm getting ready to tee off, so I'm just like, yeah, whatever, dude. You know, like okay, thank you, yep, appreciate it. All right, yep, thanks, have a good day. Didn't really listen to it. Like, hey, I know what's happening here. I don't need to. I know I'm going to be fed lip service. It's not like you're going to give me some profound instance of like, hey, you messed up on this day doing this. No, like, you know, you guys don't ever tell anybody anything anyways. So you're just going to tell me whatever you want me to hear or whatever the case may be around, you know, the release. Like it may be different for some people. I don't know. But yeah, I think budget cuts has been the thing that they've used since my pool for all the subsequent pools. Right. And that's
Yep.
How do you argue with that or whatever, right? There's no like, okay, you guys are cutting budgets, so cool. Like, thanks for the opportunity, you know?
Right. So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. What do you think about present day Otis with the shaved beard, having kind of no character, almost trying to be like uncharismatic? What do you think about the change in Otis? Because this is kind of not the Otis.
Well, I mean, this guy fucking just oozes natural charisma, you know? So he's just a special human being. Like, he's just special. I get that, you know? Has charisma in droves, way more than I ever did. I think the company didn't realize exactly how much I allowed him to just be himself and how much I could pick all the things like where his areas of most lacking are my best areas and my areas of most lacking are his best areas.
Gotcha.
And so neither of us had to try to do anything outside of the realm of just what we were capable of doing really well in order to make that thing work. You know, it's like, look, like I'm pretty articulate. I can speak really quickly and get a lot of information out really fast. I can slow down and hit some major points if I need to. And so we won't script you at all, dude. You just be you. You just be a wild man. Do whatever you want to do. Like I'll tell you when I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and you just be yourself, and I'll just react to you, and it'll work, and it'll be natural. And so, you know, I think obviously, you know, he thrived in that more than I did because he was running the comebacks, right? And so he was kind of getting those moments at the end. And when we were in NXT, we used to trade off back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And when we started there, you know, the worm and the shakes and stuff, they were getting over. So it just made sense to keep doing it like that. And, you know, in my mind, I'm like, hey, we're going to have a 3 or 4 year run. So like, let's just get as much mileage out of this as we can. And then when it comes time for you to take the heat and me to run the comeback, then we'll flip flop it. And we have plenty of that stuff in the chamber. Like we've done that a bunch of times. We can do that whenever it's time. We tried to do that one time. Vince hated it. Was like, nope, he don't take the heat anymore. He runs the comeback. So it was like,
wow.
Okay, well from here, and this is probably maybe 6-7 months after we moved up, right? So from then going forward, it's kind of known, okay, Otis has got to run the comeback. And that sort of handcuffs us a little bit just in our kind of creative freedom of what stories we're able to tell, you know, because we're just not able to kind of both, whatever. So, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of went on a long-winded thing there about his new character, but I mean, my hope is that they had him do this so that he can ultimately, when there's people, come back around and be who he's meant to be. I think if that's what they're going for, then, you know, I don't have any problem with it. And I think it could ultimately work out well for him. I mean, he's a very talented guy. Like, I think he can pull off big bad heel also. Is there as much money in that as there is in Happy Go Lucky Otis? I don't think so. No, but you know, I mean, obviously I wish you could go back from a year from now and not have perpetrated all of the things that you perpetrated on this guy for what, you know, for what reasons that you like have him in the most over story with the girl and then just have them go their separate ways and not do that. And then, you know, have one of the best, you know, I mean, I don't know that we were the most over tag team, but I would have to say we were in the top 3 during, you know, kind of the peak of our run there. Look, I mean, right before the pandemic happened, literally the week before, we go 55 minutes on TV on Friday night before Elimination Chamber. Like legit, we were on TV for 55 minutes doing the gauntlet match, you know, and then we have objectively what I think is pretty good performance at Elimination Chamber. You know, Otis goes out, I come off the top of the deal. Like there's some, you know, and to me, I think we're going to get right back in the tag team championship pictures right after that. And then the world shuts down and, you know, things go crazy. And, you know, I mean, I think the biggest issue or one of the biggest issues inside of the company in general is a lack of long-term someone overseeing the big picture. Like from what I saw there's not really anyone whose like custodial job it is to oversee the big picture. It's very week to week. And sometimes it's even shorter time frame than week to week, right? I mean, it's like, yes, it's week to week, but the discussions we're having with upper management is like about the break spot and how we're going to keep people to watch through the break spot, you know? And it's like, all right, well, I get what you guys are trying to do here to have a compelling break spot. But like, to me, if you want people to keep watching through the break, then you need to get them emotionally invested in what's happening, and then they'll stay through the break. It's not like some crazy spot at the end of the commercial. You're like, oh my God, I have to come back to see how that happened. No, like everybody's already on the outside of the ring and crashed down. You know how it happened. You just watched it. There's no anticipation there. So, you know, I think that permeates itself through a lot of things and kind of manifests in a lot of issues. But to me, that's sort of the big crux of it is just, you know, you have a lack of long-term big picture planning, and that's sort of like left to talent to take over that. And, you know, talent only have so much power.
Yeah. Now, with you, we talked a little bit about what the future has in store for you, but DDP would say, you know, what are you looking for in a few years down the road? It's a good DDP question. Like, where do you see yourself in a few years? So where do you see yourself, not in the immediate future, because we talked about it, like, let's say 2022 beyond, where do you see yourself?
Yeah. So a lot of the work that I've been doing at home you know, the work that I've been doing on myself, I've been journaling a lot of that work. I've been writing it down. I've always had big aspirations to coach and mentor. And so I'm in the process of trying to set up a self-care platform. So my wife makes candles, and she just been doing that recently, but they're, you know, kind of candles around like chakra candles and just different things around meditation. So that's kind of what I've been trying to set up. I haven't exactly figured out how, so I've started a YouTube channel. I've been on Twitch at Levi Cooper Live is where you can find me on Twitch. So far, I've just been playing video games on there, but that's been mainly just to try to figure out the platform. I've been using Streamlabs and just kind of trying to like get better at the sort of computer literacy in the short term that I've maybe neglected some over my time pro wrestling for WWE. And so ultimately, kind of, I want to use my pro wrestling going forward to promote this kind of self-care platform, right? And it's not going to be anything that's like talks about any crazy stuff. Just to me, the things that are not discussed, particularly in this country, because they're not that profitable. If you can get people to do it for themselves, then they can take care of themselves, and you can't make money on them over and over and over again, right? And so, to me, a lot of healthcare and a lot of workouts and nutrition is all like, it's capitalism in America. So they're designed to make money, not necessarily designed to make you as healthy as possible. So, you know, it's basic things like drinking 28 to 32 ounces of water in the morning before you wake up in the first half an hour. You know, like, I don't know very many people that do that. That's like can have profound health impacts. It's such a simple thing, but if you can get in the routine of doing it, it's amazing, right? And then on top of that, okay, can you meditate? Can you find 15 minutes a day to meditate? Can you find 30 minutes a day to stretch? Like, and trying to basically find a way to encourage people to do those things, and then to try to figure out a way to help them set up systems in their own life so that they can have those things going forward. To me, it's sort of about, this is very much a cliche, but you got to fill up your cup before you can pass it out to other people. And so to me, it's about trying to find, 30 to 45 minutes to an hour a day, every day, where you can find a routine to fill up your cup. So some form of self-care and self-management, so that you're not just burning the wick from both ends all the time, and all of a sudden you're 20 years down the road and, it's like my old man, your glutes not firing properly and you can't barely walk, and now you like got grandkids and now, if my dad wants to get back to being healthy, it's going to be lots and lots of work for him. I'm going to help him do that work, and I'm going to help him get there. But, I took inventory as a 30-year-old of how my parents, were, and sort of the things that I want to be able to do moving forward, and what that needs to look like on a daily basis for me in order to achieve those things. So, I feel like I've really gotten a pretty good grasp on those things over the last 6 months for myself. And I know my world's going to be turned upside down as I have a new baby coming. Right. And so that's why I've also just kind of allowed, like, my wife is starting this new job. So I'm just allowing myself the space to figure out how to kind of readjust my routines once the baby comes, and then how to just continually, I've just been, like I said, journaling and getting all this information down, and it's, I'm going to put it all out there. I haven't figured out exactly how, it may, obviously I'll do some videos, and that'll be the place I start. There may ultimately be some articles that I've found that, I have written in my journal entries. So yeah, I mean, I think as a kind of 2 or 3 year plan for me and my family going forward, that's going to be the sort of, perpetual system that I'm going to try to set up for myself. And like I said, use pro wrestling to sort of promote that. I've been floating around the idea of, as a moving forward character for myself, Levi Cooper, force of nature. And sort of just the character explores, the contrast that exists in nature between the serene, the calm, the peaceful, and that being able to manifest those things in my own life, right. And understand of, just taking the time to be in that.
Right.
But then at the flip of a coin, nature becomes super violent, super tumultuous, very dangerous. And so, yeah, as a wrestling character, I think, and as just who I am as a human being, that's going to kind of be the pillar for what I'm trying to build. Amateur wrestling will be the foundation of that pillar, right? I think there's some people that know me as Tucker and don't know that, hey, like, I was a top 10 heavyweight in this country for 3 years. Like, push comes to shove, I'm kind of a bad man. I feel like I want to remind some people of that. I would like to remind the public that, hey, like, yeah, I like to have a good time. I like to smile. I like to laugh. I like to be peaceful and calm. I like to enjoy life. But at the same token, every now and then, I like a little bit of violence. I like to beat people up with my hands. That's the way that I paid for my college. I like doing those things. I enjoy forcing the abilities that I've created for myself onto other people. And, so just kind of continue to explore and find, different ways to, present that character, I guess, too, is kind of another piece of what I've been working on.
Nice. Love it. Good stuff there. Where else can everybody find you as far as social media wise? I know you mentioned your Twitch, but the YouTube page and Twitter handle, Instagram, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Real Levi Cooper. You could find in either of those bios, there's a booking email, booklevicooper@mail.com. So if you're listening to this and, you want to book me for some signings or a little interview, maybe a couple of matches in 2022, hit me up. looking forward to all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, if you want to kind of interact with me in the short term, Twitch is the best place to do that. That's at Levi Cooper Live on Twitch. And my YouTube channel doesn't have anything on it yet, but it's Cooper Self Care is the name of that YouTube channel. And there'll be some content coming out probably in the next few months on there. Like I said, I'm still working on the content and trying to figure out exactly what I want that to be, but that'll be the place to find it when it ultimately comes to fruition.
All right. Awesome stuff, Levi. Great stuff. Good luck in the future with everything, but thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you, man.